Good evening. Welcome to Stay Tuned. I'm Casey Nolan, and tonight's guest will tell you tonight's topic is essential to making St. Louis a stronger region. We are talking education after high school. What does it mean to our students? What does it mean to our community? What do we have at stake? Can having more people with degrees actually improve our economy? We've got a lot to talk about, so stay tuned.
Navigating the halls of high school can be tough. Then figuring out a path after graduation, that's another story. But seniors in the St. Louis Public School District get some help. A program called College Summit is one of many programs in the region that helps students prepare for post-secondary education.
I would say the simplest definition is I'm like a counselor in the classroom.
College Summit teacher Krista Gurman says the program gets students thinking about college.
Most kids go to college because their parents went to college and know how the process works. And so this program was created to help the kids who don't know the process and whose parents don't know the process to guide them through it.
She helps her students understand the importance of a college degree. On average, college graduates in the St. Louis region make twice as much as workers with only a high school diploma. And in the next 5 years, half of all jobs in the state will require some sort of post-secondary education. Twins Dewana and Deanna seem to have that figured out.
My career goal is to be a cardiovascular surgeon. I want to become a corporate lawyer.
Both know their dream careers require a regular college degree plus advanced degrees, and both have applied and been accepted to numerous schools across the country, including right here at St. Louis University. What they may not know is their decision to stay in the St. Louis region will impact more than just their futures.
In order for St. Louis to continue to grow and prosper, again, we have to produce more college graduates, and we have to get more industry to actually move to St. Louis to create more jobs. It all has a direct correlation to education.
And the city has put a premium on a college education. Since 2009, the St. Louis region had the highest rate of degree completion compared to 35 other metropolitan areas across the country. But with the average college graduate swimming in more than $20,000 in student loan debt, St. Louis University professor Dr. Douglas Rush says the push to get more students into higher education might not be the right one.
It's short-sighted just to say we want everybody to have a college degree.
Research from the Center for College Affordability and Productivity shows that nearly half of recent college graduates have jobs that don't require a 4-year degree. And Rush argues many college students should rethink their majors.
We need to get more realistic. If you're going to go to college, let's plan on going to college in a field where you are going to be competitive in the 21st century world global economy.
A lot of decisions for graduating seniors. Some decisions that may seem big to them now.
We want to share the same dorm.
Others that could open doors for them and mean a lot for the city they live in. For Stay Tuned, this is Jennifer Long reporting.
Thanks to our friends at the Reynolds Journalism Institute at the University of Missouri-Columbia for that piece. And in that piece, it touched on a lot of the topics we will be diving into deeper tonight: access, persistence, and then the idea you heard there at the end, which is maybe college isn't for everyone. It's a tough job market to graduate into, but also we'll be talking about what is the long-term value of a degree. Also, the Nine Network has partnered with over 50 community partners to work on this very issue. It's something the Nine Network is committed to, the education of young people. And we have collaborated with those community partners, a lot of whom are here tonight to help us with this conversation, including Lisa Orton-Zarin with the College Bound organization, which you founded. I want to ask you to play the role of getting this conversation off on the right foot here, if you will. We just talked about a couple of terms. This is something we saw a lot in our research leading up to tonight's program over the last week. Access and persistence. Help us wrap our heads around what that even means, because we might hear that a lot more tonight.
Sure. Well, access refers to sort of the end of the high school pipeline, when you're trying to figure out what are the resources and opportunities that would allow young people to go on to higher education. What access is not talking about is the preparation and the readiness to leverage access so that you can actually go on to post-secondary education and be successful there. So if you have access without preparation and without readiness, you are creating a system or a situation in which access leads to, perhaps, if you're lucky, matriculation, but not completion. And that's what we've seen for the last 40 years.
Persistence, what do we mean when we say persistence? Because that's a real
Sure.
issue as well.
So the industry is growing up, and it used to be called retention. So that's how higher ed looked at it. It was always college's jobs to retain students. So college talked about retaining a student. But now we look at it, what is the young person's role and what is the community's role in helping that young person persist? So they move from a very passive role where colleges retain them to a very empowered role of persisting. The other thing about persistence, which is very important in tonight's context, is to understand that it can be a measurement, and it can be a very weak measurement. So persistence can mean 180 days after high school graduation. Are you still in college? So you might hear people saying, or we might hear our government saying, that young people are persisting. If they're only persisting 180 days or even one semester or 2 semesters, then they may be reaching a weak measurement, but they're not persisting to completion. And that's what we want to look for, persistence that moves toward completion. And completion in 4 years and the latest 6 years, because if you persist beyond 6 years, the data shows that you are going to have microscopic improvements in graduation rates.
As we were watching the piece there, I could tell your interest was piqued when they talked about college may not be for everyone.
Yes, and I think that's true. College is not for everyone, but the opportunity to go to college must be afforded to everyone, and disproportionately, students from low-income backgrounds attending urban schools do not have the opportunity to go to college or to even consider it an option, and the quality of their education often, the circumstances that they grow up in, the neighborhoods, the poverty, the hunger, all of the social and emotional barriers make it impossible for those children, or it takes Herculean efforts for those young people to have the opportunity to go to college. So when I hear things like college isn't for everyone, we have to be really careful to make sure that underneath that statement isn't a bias that college is for people of wealth or people of privilege, but not for maybe people who weren't afforded the opportunities of being born into a family that could afford a lot of privilege.
How are we doing in St. Louis when it comes to post-secondary education?
Well, we're making some big strides in some areas, and we're actually, I believe, on the decline in terms of our matriculation rates and graduation rates for African American and non-traditional students. So
on the decline? I
believe we are, and you have other fabulous people who can speak to that more specifically tonight.
It's by no accident we're sitting at the cafe table by this gentleman named Tanner Center. You run College Bound. Before I get to Tanner, I guess I should back up a second and tell us real quickly what College Bound is.
College Bound is a readiness program aimed at college completion. So we start with students in the 9th grade. We do a full-scale implementation in our partner schools. At the end of 9th grade, students have the opportunity to apply for a 7 to 9 year program, depending on how quickly they graduate. And they receive academic enrichment, they go on college tours, financial literacy, career training for 21st century jobs, mentoring, basically everything that a child of privilege would have growing up in a family with lots of resources. We try to recreate that for our young people, and what the data is showing now is that our students are on track and graduating at above the national average for all students.
Not just
low income. So low income students, low income first generation students have that double whammy. So they're graduating at about 10%. The national average is about 56%, and high-income kids are graduating at 75%. College-bound students are now on track to graduate at approximately 70%. So they are close to kids from the highest income quartile.
College Bound started in what year?
2006.
And in 2006, you were in that class. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What did College Bound mean to you then?
It was just another program. I guess back then I really didn't understand what College Bound was exactly, but it was another resource that you know, me and a group of let me see, my class was about 40 students. We gathered together, and it was just like another program that we all could kind of like hang out and also gain a lot of benefits from too.
So looking back with the lens of experience, what did it teach you? What did it do for you?
It taught me really to embrace opportunities and also like take advantage of our resources. Those were the two things that really stuck out to me now.
And you're back full circle to some degree.
Yeah, I work as a completion coach through AmeriCorps, but I'm back at College Bound, and I love every minute of it. Okay,
so before you got there, you made it through college. What was college like for you?
Oh, college was wonderful. I went to Lake Forest College. It was me and two other students that was in the program. We all decided to go to Lake Forest together, and it was just a wonderful opportunity. It just did wonders for me.
Is it something you saw in your future before you were in College Bound?
Yeah, but not as big as what I thought it was. I figured college was another step from grade school to middle school to high school and then college. But I really didn't have like a complete understanding of what college was at the time.
What would you so you're back full circle. What would the Tanner of today tell the Tanner back then who was just getting into College Bound? What do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Now I know that I have people that's there to support me. I have people there that's really there to boost my confidence, and I feel like with college I was able to, it was scary at first, but now it was really nothing to be afraid of. It was more of a challenge that you can complete, and that's one thing that I would tell myself. If I could go back now, I'd say just you can do it, and just have that confidence.
Could you have done it without College Bound?
To a certain degree. Like I said, I feel like I would have made it to college, but just the whole understanding of what college was. Before College Bound, I had no idea what a FAFSA was, or I had no idea what financial aid meant, and how much financial aid really plays a part of the whole college process and completion and everything. I feel like I would have lacked those aspects.
Is his story, Lisa, familiar? What he just described?
Yes, Tanner is exceptional, and actually in many ways, but what I would say is that he sounds in many ways like other college-bound students because we don't take credit for their success. It's not like we go, you would be so down and out if it wasn't for College Bound. College Bound students are amazing, and it's our job just to facilitate that, to create the opportunities, to take those barriers that are going to be in their way, to be a person who picks up the phone at 10 o'clock at night or answers the phone. But Tanner is great, and I don't want to take credit for his success.
Well, what about the questions he says? I remember asking my parents. I didn't understand the concept of 15 hours a semester even, but my parents went to college and they explained it to me. The questions he had, talking about financial aid forms and other things, are those common questions? Well,
they're more than they're questions. I mean, they're actual barriers, and it's wonderful to hear Tanner speak about all of the confidence that he has now, and I see it, and I'm just completely delighted by it. And what I will tell you is that when he was a sophomore and a junior and a senior, he was pretty darn clueless about studying and getting grades and understanding the relationship between high school and his major and what financial literacy meant and all of those things which are typical for a student who grew up in University City, in the neighborhood he grew up in, the family that he grew up with. He is very much like many of our other students. and often better, though.
And we talked about it at the top of the program.
And by better, I just mean that he really wanted this, and often the goal of working with College Bound is to work with students before they're highly aspirational and to build that aspiration.
Just not to talk about you like you're not here, but
Right.
but does Tanner's degree mean something other than just to Tanner, to the rest of us?
Oh my goodness. I mean, first of all, he's a college coach at College Bound. That says it all. I mean, he is the living statement of being able to go from an environment that was not optimal to succeeding in a small liberal arts college that was primarily white and affluent, succeeding there, and then coming back to the community and giving back. I mean, I don't know, and to give back through service. I don't know a better example of that. But, you know, in terms of our region, we have to increase the number of college graduates, because when businesses look at relocating here or businesses want to expand here, they want to know what the educational capital is of a region. And we, you know, the RCGA, newly branded, did a study, and they said that the #1 lever for increasing economic development for the region would be the number of degree holders, post-secondary degree holders. So everybody benefits. You know, when you have a college degree, your contribution to the tax base, you vote more, your children go to school with a higher readiness, you rely on emergency room care less, public aid. I mean, the benefits are extraordinary, not to mention how invigorated and how excited our region will be when we increase the level of degree attainment.
What do you tell young people you're trying to help get to that degree?
Oh, I tell them, like I said, just be confident. That's one thing that I feel like I've learned in that 4-year process while I was at Lake Forest is to be confident, believe in yourself. Because if you believe in yourself, then it's a matter of going and doing it. So now I tell my students now, I say, you know, persevere. You know, if you get a bad grade on a test, you know, don't beat yourself up about it. You know, just look forward to the next one and rise to that challenge. So really, like, just persevering through is what I really try to communicate with my students.
Perseverance, and also the access that requires the preparation we talked about, and then that theme I know we're going to hear more about tonight is what's really under that question or that statement of college may not be for everyone. Opening that up a little bit more. Thank you both for your time. Thank you for being here.
No
we have more experts coming up in just a moment, but first we know that you have a lot to add to this conversation to make this a smarter conversation, and to tell you how we'd like to have that happen is Mr. Ed Reggie. Ed?
Thanks, Casey. Well, it's true. Here at Stay Tuned, you are a big part of the conversation, and we want to hear from you. We actually want to use your conversation throughout the night. So how do you see this impacting you in the broader community? What are your questions that you may have about college and people graduating college? So we want to hear from you. We made it easy. There are 2 ways you can actually join the conversation. We posted a question to our Facebook page, the 9 Network. We want you to log on and respond to that question. You can also send us a tweet. Use the hashtag StayTunedSTL. And throughout the night, we'll be using your questions in the show. Let's see, and let's take a look at what you're already saying.
Okay, we're back at the table now with the group to talk about some of what we just touched on, and that is some of the challenges that we face in this conversation. Stacy Clay with College Summit is here with us. Also Beth Bender with Gateway STEM High School, the principal of Gateway STEM High School, and Philip Boyd with the Normandy School District. Thank you all for being here. Let me ask you this here. We've got a stat that by 2018, so that's, first of all, 2018 is just 5 years from now, if you can believe that. Close to 60% of all jobs in Missouri will require some form of post-secondary education. Do you buy that? And what happens if those workers aren't here to fill those jobs? Does that sound like a reasonable prediction to you guys?
It certainly does to me. What we've already seen in our economy is that even in the recession, we have seen job growth. 4 million new jobs have been added. Most of those jobs have been for folks with a college degree. So it's not about even what's happening in the future, but it's about what's happening right now in terms of young people getting some sort of credentialing after high school. Now, it may not manifest as going to Harvard or WashU or even SLU, but certainly vocational technical training, 2-year institutions, even certification programs. But every young person needs some sort of credentialing beyond high school to be economically viable in this economy.
And more on the access that we started to talk about just a minute ago. What do you see as the thing we should tackle first when it comes to access for more people?
I think awareness. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I think partnerships with organizations like College Summit are so important, is because we have to build that awareness of that potential bridge from high school into college, and so that we can give our students sort of that vision of what comes next. I think that's really important, that awareness, and then helping them understand, okay, when you get to college, these are some of the other avenues that you need to make sure that you're aware of. That whole process, coming from a background where I'm first generation, I mean, that it was essential that I had adults that were helping to kind of shepherd me through. Because at first, when I was in high school, I didn't really think about college that much because that wasn't my family's background. So it's really important. I mean, I wish I had, you know, somebody like a College Summit or someone like Stacy that I could have gone to when I was a kid. That would have been really important.
I think we need to work smarter also. At the high school level, what we've seen is that we need to, we stopped and retooled at Gateway. What we saw was that we were helping certain students, the kids that could network, you know, even if they were first generation, they knew, oh, I'll go see, you know, this teacher, I'll go see this counselor, I'll have this person. Certain students were being overserved. Other students were not being served at all. At Gateway STEM, what we've started just last year was to really look at it in a systematic fashion, using data. Education now is so much data rich. And the reason for that is that lets us make sure we are getting to every student. So when we meet every 2 weeks with our counselors, and then every second time, we meet with our service providers. We have College Bound, we have College Summit, we have TRIO, we have all sorts of people that come to the table. And what we need to do is make sure we're working together and working smart so that there's not 5 people helping one student and nobody helping another. And really looking at all those factors. What are factors for students? I have a school with a high English language learner population. What are the road bumps that a student faces if English is not their native language? If there is issues with, are they citizens of the United States? There are certain states that are more willing to educate and processes that are easier. What we've seen is that we've had to retool and relearn our positions and work in a whole different fashion. But what we're seeing already is it's paying off. And that's something at Gateway STEM we're trying to spread around. We've talked to Normandy, Jennings, and anybody, because we know that this is so crucial.
You talk about English as a second language. What other barriers are there to access that you see?
Well, definitely poverty. I mean, I think one of the reasons that poverty impacts is because when you talk about, especially multi-generational poverty, you don't have that tradition of going to college and really thinking about the next steps. It's much more of, you know, how can I get to the next level of subsistence as opposed to really growing and thriving. It's just the mindset. You have to change that mindset. I mean, there's a lot of research around that, you know, not only in terms of children being able to really feel a sense of agency when they come from an impoverished background, but also their parents feeling a sense of agency as well. So we have to not only help children to develop that college-going mindset, but we also have to help their parents understand how to be advocates for the child to get to college.
And it's really about understanding the college process. The college application process is unlike any other. I can't think of any other process where you apply for something 9 months before you actually manifest going there. And so there's a lot of moving pieces. The FAFSA is just one that is a tremendous barrier.
The financial aid aspect.
Yes, free application for federal student aid. It is the gateway to all aid, be that federal government, state, or institutional aid, especially that which is need-based. And for the populations that we work with, they demonstrate the need, and certainly those resources are necessary for them to successfully matriculate in and complete college.
And teaching the families, we've all spoken to that, and not just the student. I'll give you an example. There are for-profit colleges out there, and they are wonderful at marketing. And many of our families will be like, wow, we saw this is great opportunity. And it's our job, and we work to make sure that people are making good choices. People can get swept into decisions, and it's our job to not only deal with the FAFSA, the financial aid, and what happens when they get to school, but are they getting to the right school? If you can go to one school that'll cost $40,000 for 2 years, or you can go to a school that's going to cost you $8,000, we need to guide our families, and we need to do that. And I think in the old days, schools, you wanted, as a high school principal, you want your kids to graduate. Not anymore. It's not just graduate. You've got to make sure that they go on to good things and where they are going to be taken care of. Schools that have good rates of graduation, where they know that the financial aid is going to be as positive as possible. We don't want to leave our students in debt. So we need to make sure we're taking care of kind of the whole plate, where in the old days they didn't need to.
Talk a little bit more about that financial aid piece. How daunting is that? How daunting are those forms? And is that process alone a stumbling block?
It can be. It can be without resources, without guidance, certainly. And there's some folks doing some great work in that space. The Scholarship Foundation in particular is really assisting families, and Collins Summit partners with them robustly. We find finances being a barrier on a couple of different levels, at least understanding the process. First of all, the FAFSA, but then even getting the award letters from schools. They aren't standardized, and so you can get University X will send you one financial aid letter, University Y will send you another that looks a different way, and it's not entirely clear or transparent as to what it will actually cost a student to be able to attend a particular institution. Recently, the federal government has done some things. There's a cost of attendance calculator that is supposed to be on every school's website. It's supposed to be within 2 pages, so it's not 15 pages buried under several clicks. So that's small steps are being made to help with that process, but it's still quite daunting for many families.
What about the vision? You talked about being a first-generation college attendee. What's the vision at Normandy with your students? Do they expect to go to college? And how do you change that if not?
I think some of our students do, but I think we have to do a much better job to make that a robust vision for more of our students. I think that as we go into next year, we're going to be having a much more in-depth partnership both with College Summit and with our Missouri core advising staff that's going to be there. We're going to be planning on having many more meetings with guidance staff, with parents and with students on a monthly basis to make sure that we keep that process going. I think we have to also do some very simple things with some of our kids, which is to help them understand that, listen, this is the bridge to the next level for your life. And I'll give you an example. You know, there were some interesting statistics that came out at the end of 2012 around, well, who's unemployed. You know, so there were 4 numbers: 22, 11, 7, and 4. 22% of Americans without a high school diploma were unemployed. 11% of Americans with a high school diploma were unemployed. 7% of those with a 2-year degree were unemployed, and 4% with a bachelor's degree were unemployed.
Real quick, did I get your personal story right? I want to make sure I didn't misunderstand you there first. Did your parents attend college?
No, they did not. No, they did not. In fact, my mom was originally from Thailand. She only went as far as the 5th grade. So, you know, there was, but she did an amazing thing with us when we were kids. She used to trick us, and she used to say that her eyes would hurt. She said, "Hey, I need you to read this for me." So by the time we were both all in 1st grade, we read way above grade level because we were reading all of her paperwork for her. You know, so she knew. I mean, coming from a third world country and understanding, you know, what that meant to have an education, she made sure that we at least were very literate. We had a very strong, I would say, internal book culture. That was one of the things that never got turned down in our house was to buy a book. So.
not using tricks, but all of you are doing the same thing for children now, and thank you for being here with us tonight. We appreciate your time. Let's go back to social media where we are trending. So that means this is something that's important to you, and we want to hear what you're saying. Okay, we're back in the studio with Faith Sandler with St. Louis Graduates and the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis. We just mentioned that the topic of tonight's discussion is trending on Twitter, but let's go in a little deeper. We know people are interested in, but really, why should we care? What does this mean if my children are going to college? Why should I care about this conversation?
Very good question. You should care because you live in a community where you want your neighbors to vote. You want people to be able to take care of themselves economically and raise their children in healthy and nurturing environments. You want businesses and companies to come to the St. Louis area because we have the kind of workforce they want to employ. You want, when it's election day or when there's a community meeting, you want an educated citizenry involved in making the decisions that will shape the future of the community in which you live. And not unimportantly, even if you don't have kids, or even if you don't have a college degree, the data shows us that your wages will be higher if you live in a community where there is a higher degree completion rate. So it's very much a situation in which a rising tide lifts all boats, and a healthy community has a higher college completion rate.
And even on an individual level, do the statistics show that, like, a longer life expectancy, for instance?
Yes, better physical health, certainly all sorts of other indicators of the vibrancy of an individual, both economically and otherwise.
Tell me about the study St. Louis Graduates did.
So St. Louis Graduates is a consortium of nonprofit agencies, many of whom you've heard from this evening, as well as funders, business leaders, and philanthropic interests in our community, band together a number of years ago to say, there are some great things happening in St. Louis. They would be greater if we were working together, if we had a consistent set of definitions, some goals we shared, and if we could leverage what we all know to move towards a greater degree completion in our region. We set a goal then that by 2020, which doesn't seem that far away now, our region should be at 50% of our adults having a degree beyond high school. That might be a 2-year degree, that might be a 4-year degree, it might be a technical degree, it might be a liberal arts degree, it might be a graduate degree. But we're looking to build the kind of community in which we all want to live. 3 years ago, we released some data, and one of the big punchlines that might be familiar to our viewers and our readers is that St. Louis at the time ranked 12th among the 35 largest metropolitan regions in the country, 12th in high school degree completion, 24th in baccalaureate degree completion. And that sounded pretty good. We were fairly happy with that. But when we started to drill down further, we then realized that we were 31st of 35 in the proportion of our African American population that had completed a degree. And that really was the catalyst to set a goal and to begin to work smarter, as we heard Dr. Bender say, to work smarter and work in greater collaboration towards that 50% goal.
Where are we now, and why 50%? Why that goal, and where are we now?
We chose that goal because we looked at some of the most vibrant metropolitan regions in the country, and we said we want to be like those areas where employment's high, average wages are high, and quality of life is good. So when we set that goal, we then said we're going to measure this sequentially. We're going to report this transparently to the community, and we're going to make progress. 3 years later, we revisited that data just recently, and we've heard earlier this evening, St. Louis has made the most progress of all of those 35 metropolitan areas in just this 3-year period. That's fantastic. We're proud, we have reason to celebrate, and there have been so many contributors and participants in that
So
process.
what are we doing right? Why are we leading there?
What we are doing right is we have quality programs in this region, we have educational leadership committed, and we have business leadership committed in this community as well, between the Chamber and Civic Progress and a number of other business leadership organizations. We have recognition of how important this is to our region.
There's buy-in.
There is a great deal of buy-in. We still have great gaps in the progress by race and by geography. So this is not just an issue in our region in the urban core, although it's very vibrant and very evident in the urban core, but also in semi-rural parts of our region, where college going is no more a tradition than it is in some parts of the central city.
So how do you tackle those areas?
The same way we tackle the urban core. The kinds of programs you've heard about this evening, addressing affordability, providing scholarships, and the kind of support that families need to make good decisions that will limit debt and improve access and persistence to a degree.
You said we're doing the best so far in that time span of the top 35. Are there other cities that have tackled this that we can look to and see where it's made a real positive impact on the local economy?
There are, and those cities are investing not just person power, but real money. Real money in the affordability, in the scholarships and the support that students need once we've prepared them to make that transition and to stay in school after they've made that transition.
Let's go back to the beginning of the show when we heard the idea that college may not be for everyone. What do you say?
I was so hoping you were going to ask me that question. I was so hoping you were going to ask me. When I hear that question, I typically want to turn around and say, is it for your kids? Because so often when I hear college isn't for everyone, it's said about some other group of people, not me, not my kids. And I think that's very telling. I think, as we heard Stacy say earlier, post-secondary education is for everyone. We know that a high school diploma is insufficient anymore to be economically independent throughout one's lifetime. You need a post-secondary degree or certificate. College comes in so many different shapes and forms now. And so I would challenge all of us to think of college not just as the very expensive 4-year private liberal arts institution located remotely, but to think of college also as our 2-year community college, to think of college as Rankin Technical College or other accredited nonprofit technical colleges that can offer another path to self-sufficiency and to build our community.
So we are making progress. There's more progress to be made, and maybe the mindset needs to shift for all of us a little bit when, as you said, it concerns other people's kids.
Right.
Thank you very much, Faith Sandler with St. Louis Graduates. We appreciate your time, and let's go back to social media to see what you're saying online. Okay, we're back at the table in the studio with Carolyn Jackson with Trio Upward Bound at St. Louis Community College, Megan Sprung with Harris Stowe, and Barrett Taylor here with St. Louis Public Schools, a frequent guest on the show. We appreciate you being back, Barrett, for a conversation that I know is close to your heart as it is with everyone. So what does it mean to have a college-going culture? What does that mean to you guys?
Well, when I hear that phrase, a college-going culture, I'm thinking of a reservoir of intelligent people ready to take on jobs in the future. And what we need to do to make sure we have this college-going culture, we need to have families and schools as well as community organizations with the same message of educating our youth for the future. It's also going to be important for our students to be exposed to career opportunities very, very young in life. And that way, when they're exposed, they're ready for those challenges in the future as well. And I think our schools also need to be involved to let our students know that they can be prepared to be successful in college, and that's important.
We've talked about access tonight. We've talked about what it means to us as a community at large. Let's talk about that other word we heard off the top of the show, persistence, and real persistence, not just a statistical persistence that may mean 180 days. What does it take to have real persistence beyond high school into college?
Oh, I feel that in order to have that real persistence, that there has to be some motivation from some different areas. Certainly, students come in, and those students that are destined to achieve have that high self-efficacy, they're ready to do that. But then we have other students who are sort of struggling through this process, not necessarily certain what their long-term goals are career-wise, professionally, personally. And in order to try to foster that college-going culture, I feel that college campuses themselves have a lot that they need to add to that by fostering an environment in which they engage the students, that they articulate what some possible goals could be, and they also reinforce and motivate what those students have laid out as their priorities. That way they stay motivated to go on, persist, graduate, perhaps go on, do graduate level studies, get into a particular career field. But beyond that, also having to identify what those challenges are for those students and having those honest narratives with those students so that you can integrate that into your college culture so that you can focus on what their needs are and identify them on an individual basis as well as collectively so that they can continue to succeed.
You're in the classroom at the high school level. What is a typical high school senior? Are they focused in the right way in terms of this conversation? Is this on their minds?
Well, I think it depends on the school. You asked the question about what this college-going culture. When I was at Metro High School, a school in the St. Louis Public School District, the number one school in the state of Missouri, it was a true college-going culture. From the day you entered the school, every student was focused on going to, an Ivy League school or a top-level school in the country. It started with, the students, the teachers, the janitors, the parents. Everybody in that school was talking about going to college.
That was the expectation.
That was the expectation. And the expectation was not you're going to Missouri State. You're going to the best schools. So it pushed everybody within that school to work hard and to strive to get in those schools. So. The Missouri ACT average is a 21. If you scored a 21 at Metro, the kids were, they were embarrassed. You wanted to get a 30, you wanted to get a 29, you wanted to get a 28. That started with the teachers, the parents, and the administrators in that building.
So how do we replicate that in other schools?
I don't know. I think it starts with leadership. I think it starts with, bringing parents, getting parents in those schools, but also with the teachers too. It starts with having high expectations for all students.
I totally agree, you're right. Parents, teachers, and administrators must be the individuals who are involved in having high expectations for those students. We have parents who may not feel like they're a part of the school system that their child is attending, and I think it's important that we pull parents in and even teach our parents what's needed for their child to go to college. And because parents must be a part of that college planning process, schools must develop, and I'm sure that they do, but I'm saying all schools need to develop a educational plan in which the parents are part of that plan to help the child to have higher expectations. So when the child has a parent involved, the child is really motivated to be a completer. So we want to make sure our parents are involved. Parents also motivate the teachers and the administrators to do more for that student as well.
When you see kids coming to Harris Stowe, can you size them up, if you will, and tell who's going to finish?
I wouldn't say that you can essentially size any of the students up. Perhaps I'm on the optimistic side and say that if they come through our doors and they've dedicated to going through this process to apply, that there is some hope that they can actually complete and finish. But what you do start to find as you work with the students who continue to struggle is that those are definitely great proactive methodologies that they've mentioned at home, you know, the modeling by the parents, the communication from family members, hands-on interactions from teachers. But a lot of the students that we have now, they haven't been able to be exposed to that modeling behavior because you may look at a college student and whatever your stereotype or idea of what their background is isn't always necessarily true. You look at these students and their nuclear families are not what someone thinking of a nuclear family's definition would be. They're not always with parents and siblings. A lot of times students are with other family members or even family friends that they're being raised with, or they're faced with social and economic issues in which they're dealing with challenges that they're traditional age students, but really these are non-traditional student problems in which you are trying to work full-time, you're trying to take care of dependents. And so you do have to be reactive at the college level because a lot of these students coming in, they have a desire to want to do something with their lives. In the back of their mind, they don't necessarily have all that information to really know what it takes to be dedicated to persisting and completing. So that's where colleges and universities both need to be proactive in identifying those students by having that narrative with them, and then also being reactive and helping those students when they do get in those situations where they feel like they have a struggle and they're disappointed and don't want to persist.
Barrett, what else should we be doing? Well, we'll give you the last word here as we're wrapping up.
Well, I think we have to be honest about what's really going on. And I think we should say go to college, but also we should emphasize vocation and trade schools. Because if I could go back, I would go and maybe be a plumber, or I would do construction. There's nothing wrong with going to Rankin or getting a trade. I think people go to college and they graduate and they work at Schnucks or Walmart. Nothing against that, but I think we should really be telling kids, you know, what do you really want to do and what can you do?
Raising their expectations still, even in that vein. Thank you all for your time. We appreciate each of you being here and for your insights. We have also, though, through American Graduates, gone out into the community and talked to students. We wanted their perspective in tonight's show.
Sometimes we do tend to push adults away from us when they try to talk to us.
So even though we might walk around with that exterior like, we don't need y'all, we got it, we can do it on our own, that's just the front, we scared.
I'm out there, you know, trying to look for help, trying to find...
As part of the 9 Network's American Graduate Initiative, our community partners, educators, experts, and civic leaders met with young people to hear firsthand about their struggles to finish school and their successes.
You know, you want to do it, but then there's so much other stuff going on for real. It just wasn't in my mind.
If you haven't never been raised with the thought of you're going to make it farther, you're going to make it past the education level your parents made it, you're going to make it to college, in your head, all you know is the streets, and when you out there, you know what to do, who to talk to, how to live.
So I ain't want to be like a member of the next generation of the drug dealers. I'm just trying to stay focused and keep my grades up.
That's all I want to do now is go to school.
Same time, take that 5 minutes out to 10 minutes out and help.
Do something to try to help them out, you know, push them on the right path towards, you know, going to school.
So you're talking about a caring adult who is willing to go the extra mile, check in with you all constantly, check in with you all just to make sure you're on the straight and narrow. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Covered a lot of ground tonight, and to help us make sense of some of the tentacles we've had here in this discussion, Dr. Kathleen Sullivan Brown from the University of Missouri St. Louis. I guess real quickly, let's go back to kind of the framework we had at the beginning of the show, talking about access, persistence, and then this idea that Barrett kind of touched on, is that 4-year degree for everyone. What have you heard tonight about access?
Well, I've heard a lot about access, particularly in terms of the barriers that are there for low-income students whose families don't have the resources to pay for college. And the reason that that's important is those are some of the population subgroups that we know are getting larger in our society. So those are the people we want to be educated because they're going to be taking care of all of us.
So the very people that need help,
yes,
that group is getting larger.
Right.
So we better figure it out.
So we better figure out
anything.
how to help them. Yes.
Okay, so persistence. What have you heard tonight? What would you like to add to the conversation?
Well, persistence is a really good concept to think about all of this, particularly because it's one thing just to be persistent in your studies, but what happens with lower income students who don't have who have difficulty getting to college in the first place, they also have trouble staying in college. One family crisis, they may have to go back home. One relative gets sick and goes in the hospital, they may have to cut their college career short. So persistence is not only the persistence of the student and retention, as someone mentioned, by the colleges, but it's making sure that those life events that can happen don't cause a student to leave school.
I'm going to do something here because we're having a little trouble with your microphone. I'm just going to make sure that, can we hear it, Kent? I'm going to move it to this side. I'm going to scoot closer to you. Well, okay, so going back to what you were just saying, this is live television. Just you can just leave it right there. He'll put an extra one on you. Okay. Something while they're doing that I want to talk about. We just heard Megan from Harris Stowe talking about the individual who is not only going to college but putting themselves through college. And you mentioned that one family crisis. Talk more about that. Persistence is different for different people.
Right. And for example, we don't necessarily have programs. You heard about a couple of very innovative programs here, particularly to help with the access piece. We also need programs to help with the persistence piece. How do we get a student over some of those family crises? There was a study out of Pennsylvania that suggested students who struggle with the finances also struggle staying in school because of these types of events. And there are many, you know, the whole idea of the college-going culture to prepare you to go to school. You also have to have the college support network to keep you in school. You have to have advisors, faculty, residential staff, guidance counselors, other counselors who can help you when you have an emotional crisis while you're in college. It does happen a lot.
And this is not just an issue, though, that as important as it is for the individual students, it means something to the larger community.
It does. And when you think about it, the question about should all individuals go to college, I think the way we need to think about that is that as a community, we need people who have expertise. I want my dentist to know what he or she is doing when he's taking care of me, or the brain surgeon, or the attorney, or the engineer or architect who's building structures that my safety depends upon. We need people to have expertise, and gaining that expertise requires amassing knowledge. We have a knowledge economy. And so we need people to be motivated to work that hard, to stick to it until they get those skills. The skills of a surgeon, a pediatric, oncologist, all of those that our society now has become so dependent upon. An airplane pilot. I mean, we want people who can take care of all these social needs that we now depend upon. And one way to do that is they get some of that preparation in college. In the knowledge economy, the skills that people need are particularly analytical skills. And you can get those in a variety of ways, but most of our colleges and our community colleges have created a curriculum, probably needs a little work, but the idea is to help people become thinkers. Going back all the way to Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin. They said that for a democracy, a citizen has to be able to think and to make logical connections. And assess and evaluate issues without somebody having to tell them how to think. That's the executive ability, as John Dewey called it, of understanding your own needs and your own motivations. Otherwise, you're not a free people.
I think that's a good place to leave it right there.
Okay,
Thank you for the perspective. Dr. Kathleen Sullivan-Brown from UMSL, we appreciate your time. And let's go back to Ed quickly to see what you're saying. Ed?
Thanks, Casey. So we are going to continue the conversation after the show. We have a little after show program. So we want to give you that website information so that you can tune in. You can go online to actually staytuned.9net.org/live. We want you to head over there. We're going to continue the conversation for about 10 minutes. It's sort of an informal after-hour show. It's really informative. We also want to remind you that American Graduate is much more than a high school diploma. An American Graduate is a successful adult. We want you to go to that website, 9net.org/American Graduate. Let's see what you are continuing to say on social media.
As Ed said, the conversation will continue online. For Ed, Reggie, I'm Casey Nolan. Thanks for watching and stay tuned. What are the issues that are important to you and to the St. Louis region? Share your insights. We want your ideas for a future episode of Stay Tuned. Call 314-512-9009 or email us at staytuned@ketc.org. Would you like to be a live audience member on Stay Tuned? Email us at audience@ketc.org. And you can always connect with Stay Tuned on Facebook and Twitter. Soon, the city of St. Louis will have a newly elected mayor. But first, the Democratic primary.
Nobody's going to lose their job.
There have been debates, speeches, promises, and a lot of campaigning. Next time on Stay Tuned, we make sense of the politics and explore what the potential impact of this election is for St. Louisans and for those outside of the city. Join us next time for a conversation about the mayoral race. We're talking to journalists, experts, and to you. So stay tuned.
You may sit down, Mr.
Okay, we're still getting situated here, but we're on the web now, so let's continue talking what we've been talking about. Lisa, we started with you. It's been a while since you had a chance to talk, and if you're like me, when you get in the elevator, you wish you would have said something else. So what have you heard tonight? What would you like to pick up on here?
Well, I wish we were talking more about education in the high school years and in the years prior to high school, because there is no point in providing access for students who are unprepared for the rigors of college. And the reality is that 80% of the students who are in remedial courses in college had 3.0 GPAs. They're suffering from incredibly inflated scores. So how do we manage to talk about this issue of post-secondary education and relate it to the quality of education that students are receiving? It is just not fair to allows students to get through high school without having taken college preparatory courses, without having taken the Core 4, and then to say to them, we will provide you access and opportunity, we will give you a chance to go to college, when they are completely unprepared to do the work of college. And then they get there and they feel terrible about themselves, they feel that they have failed when in fact they haven't been equipped. They hold incredible levels of debt that they're unable then to repay because they can't reach a degree that is commensurate with the debt they assumed. So we need to connect education, quality academics to this conversation, and until we do that, we as a community are not doing our work.
So do we blame?
We're not blaming anybody. This is not a blame game. There is no blame here. This is just about speaking truth.
So we know there's a disconnect between what's going on in the universities and in the high schools. But the question I would ask is, what do universities do to reach out to high schools, to inform the high schools of what they should be doing?
I'm not smart enough to tell you what the answer is. I'm telling you that everybody has a role in this. And the high schools shouldn't be looking at what the colleges are doing. The high schools should be looking about what can they do in the high schools to provide a quality education. If we have, look, we have higher education, state universities in this state that are graduating students at 21%. We are throwing away billions of dollars. That is not okay. That college and those colleges, they have to deal with that. That's their business. Those of us who are in high school space need to make sure that the quality of education in those high schools is as good as the best high school in our region. And so far, that isn't happening. And the same thing is true with our college preparation and access services. We need to each do our job and not point fingers and not blame. But the fact is, the people who are suffering are the students. They are not being given a fair deal. They're not being, and for us to talk about access without connecting it deeply to the quality of education is, it is just wrong thinking, because the primary reason that students don't succeed in post-secondary education, at least in pursuit of their bachelor's degree and associate's degree, is academics, followed closely by finances. And that's the data. That's the data, period.
And I understand where you're coming from completely with that. Absolutely, I would be behind a complete overhaul of K through 12 so that we're on the same page locally, as a state, regionally, as a nation, because there does seem to be inconsistencies with the quality of education that students are receiving in K through 12. And definitely that's a huge conversation, and we can't necessarily point to one thing. There's a lot of deficiencies as far as the standards go, funding where it's needed in the K through 12 system to offer programs to get students academically equipped, whether they choose to go to college or into a trade. I would be the first one behind you to agree with you on that statement. But also, unfortunately, with your service that you have, we can't glaze over the fact that now we have lots of students who've gotten so far into the K through 12 system that there's not going to be an easy fix to this situation. So, I think that the work that you're doing are great in assisting students so that they understand how to, navigate the access into college and the things that they need to do in order to be successful in college. But that's a lot of burden for your program to bear, any of these independent programs to bear. So working collectively certainly provides the best services to our students to encourage them. But definitely I would agree with you that academic backbone, that piece that comes through K through 12, that's definitely a serious conversation that we need to have.
Faith, let's go back to the study that St. Louis graduates did. Can you jump in on this with any statistical information? As it pertains to the academic part of the conversation, was that in there? Okay.
I mean,
that's why I ask you these questions in the web version.
That it's a simple answer, yes or no. No, I mean, first of all, it's no secret that this is an incredibly diverse metropolitan area. So the issues that Lisa's describing are certainly deep and significant, but they are not they are not in every low income or low moderate income community in our region. So there are students of that demographic who are making it academically, who are able to transition to college. I'm not diminishing the significant deficiencies that we see in some high schools and in some school districts, but I also don't want to discount the fact that there are kids who make it. And so statistically, no, I can't tell you. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education could tell you more than I can tell you about that.
Yes.
I think it's important that we ensure that the high school curriculum for graduation for that student who wants to go to college is what the college needs for that student to enter. So we don't need a student who maybe has 1 year of foreign language going to college when the college may require 2 years of foreign language. That's going to be important.
Or even, and I'm this speaking from personal experience, having had the 2 years of foreign language, I was starting at 0 when I got to Mizzou, and that was a lot different French class than what I had in my Scott County High School.
And the curriculum must be a rigorous curriculum. You must be able to be competitive. At Upward Bound, our students are with us for 4 years, and that summer of that 4th year they graduate from high school, they take academic classes at the college campus. And what our students, they perform well because they're familiar with the environment of St. Louis Community College. They're there every summer, and they're there every other weekend taking classes, so they're comfortable with that environment. But when they go away to a college, and when they're not at their home, they're going away to the college or the residence hall, they're having problems because the curriculum that they were exposed to in their high school was not rigorous enough to compete. I may be a 3.8 student, but when I enter college, that GPA drops to a 2.0 or 1.8. That shouldn't be. And I understand the grade point average will drop some from high school to college, but it should not be a major drop, because that school should have been very rigorous for that student. So does that student have a 3.8 because I was a super nice student? Or does that student have a 3.8 because he took a rigorous curriculum and he did well? It may not be reflected by the time they enter college, and that's the problem.
Tanner, as the person at this table who most recently went to college and high school, what are we missing here? What would you like to add?
Well, one thing that I'm just listening to everyone's comments is one thing Lisa touched on is like well, let me see how I'm trying to say this. Is like the confidence level. For me, it's the confidence level. As a student at University City High School, I took pre-calc, and then when I got to college, I thought I'd go to calculus, and that course almost made me quit school. It was the toughest courses. It was my first course of college, and I just was not ready for that course. So I know Lisa touched on it that I had to take a remedial math college course. But yeah, and I feel like that really shook up my confidence level, and it made me wonder and question, is college for me? Like I said, after I went to that calculus course, I was wondering, are all my courses going to be like this? Am I ready for this? I was immediately, luckily I had my other 2 roommates to actually kind of pick me up and say, let's get through this and stick with it. So really, like, the academic piece is so important, I think, because it'll shock the student, and it'll make the student want to quit. It'll make the student call home and say, I don't think I could do this. And then once the money piece add into it, and you realize how much money you're paying for this education that you don't think you can compete with, then you just want to like give up. So that's one thing that, like I said, I'm kind of gaining. It's just like that academic piece, that portion is really, really important.
This is why we have the post show, because this is what we get to kind of, there's an Italian word, I'm sure, that has something to do with pasta, but I forget how to use it properly because I didn't take Italian. But we catch all the stuff that we missed, and so I thank you for sticking around a little later for us. We'll have to make sure we get the word out for people to join us online. This is good. Thank you so much.